Hey everyone, welcome to Landscape and Lore, where every path leads to a story. And do I have a story for you tonight? So go grab your favorite beverage, kick back in a comfy chair. We're going to talk about Sasquatch. You know, it's very hot right now in Arizona, and I have so much on my plate. I'm still trying to finish a new book that will be released in the fall. And because of that, I've not been able to get out and explore and go camping like I typically do. But I still wanted to give you a good story, and tonight I'm going to tell you about something that happened around 2 years ago. This all began when my husband and I watched a movie tonight, and it brought back so many memories. I was on a solo camping trip. I left Arizona and was making my way across the country to go visit family in North Carolina. And I was really looking forward to camping in the Blue Ridge and the Smoky Mountains. And so going across the country, I knew that there was places in Arkansas that I wanted to stop and check out and do some exploring there. And it was very humid. Now, living in Arizona, I am used to that dry heat. So by the time I got to the Hot Springs, Arkansas area, I thought I was just going to die. It was so hot, and I'm going to show you a picture of what I looked like after I set up camp. It was miserable. And it was buggy, and I couldn't seem to get dry. And so it was pretty miserable going to sleep at night. I had to wait till, it cooled off, which was usually around 12, 1 o'clock. I left my rain flap off so I could get more circulation in my tent, but it was still not pleasant. So I was booking it across the country, and I made it to Tennessee, and I was excited, but I didn't quite reach the mountains. I was in mid-southern Tennessee, and I found a neat little area that had some cool history and some local lore that I wanted to explore. And so I pitched my tent next to this little creek. Now, this was a camping area. It was not like an improved campground that you find with all the amenities. It was still dry camping. And there was other tenters in the area, so it wasn't just me. I don't normally like to wild camp by myself if there's not some other people around, just because I'm a single female and I just prefer to do that. I do protect myself, but it's always nice to be aware that you have neighbors, good neighbors. Not all neighbors are good, but I do pay attention to my surroundings and try to make sure that I'm in safe areas. There was families camping with their children, and that's usually a pretty good sign. So I found a place about 35, 40 feet from a creek. And this is such a pretty little creek. And it was still hot and humid and a little on the buggy side. But the creek was very clear, and it wasn't very deep. It had some pools, but for the most part, you could, walk across it, and it was cooling, which I spent some time in it, during the day because it was a way to cool down. And the creek was just really delightful, and I did some little excursions and did some exploring during the day. As I was setting up the rest of my camp and getting ready for dinner, I just made what I call a foil dinner, where you just throw some pork chops and slice some potatoes and onions and, season it a little bit, wrap it up very nicely in heavy foil, throw it in the coals, and then it'll just kind of cook itself. You can flip it back and forth so, things don't burn, and the juices saturate the potatoes and onions, and it's good. And you can eat it right from the foil. I typically put mine on a plate, but, I have eaten right from the foil. So it was a nice little dinner, had a glass of wine. It was beginning to cool down. So about 10 probably, the neighbors were entertaining me with some music. And they played music I like, which was not so bad. Sometimes if you don't like their type of music, it's not so great, but this was okay. And so I went into my tent, wrote some things on my laptop, and then I just pretty much shut things down and went to sleep. And I was in a hard sleep because I had walked a lot that day and I had explored a lot that day. And so about 2 o'clock, I woke up to the most god-awful sound. And when you're in this heavy, deep sleep and something wakes you up, it takes a few minutes to get your bearings. And so I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's a bear. Now I knew it was coming from the creek behind me. And there was a lot of brush and a fallen tree and some things back there. So I didn't think anything was going to come from the creek right to my tent because there was enough debris there that it was not going to be an easy path. So this thing was making a sound that I would call a challenge. My mind, having just woken up, I'm trying to logically tell myself what must be happening back there. I don't like for my imagination to get too carried away unless I'm writing a story. So I'm thinking it's challenging a bobcat, a coyote. He's trying to chase it away and show that he is the biggest, baddest predator. He's the strongest predator and they need to leave what they've got. That's the message I'm getting from this sound. I could not replicate the sound if I tried. But I can give you an idea of the cadence of the sound. And please don't laugh at me. Don't you dare put a whole bunch of comments down about what I'm getting ready to do. But anyway, so this bear, what I thought was a bear, was making this sound like and then it was like if you could imagine something very heavy and large stomping on the ground or hitting a tree trunk. That's what it was sounding like. But the sound, as I said, I cannot replicate the sound, did not sound like a bear. Well, now I'm getting a little bit concerned. I'm thinking, is there something hurt out there? What in the world? I mean, I'm thinking, gosh, is a deer, an elk, maybe they got stuck and they've broken their leg or something. There's emotion in this sound. And I couldn't tell if it was pain or anger, but I could tell that it was not happy. So I get up, slip on my tennis shoes, grab my flashlight and my pistol and my car keys. Because I'm thinking, if whatever it is going to come towards me, and it did sound like it was coming right behind me, but I was thinking if it was going to come towards me, I didn't want to be in this little bitty tent. I'd probably be better off in my car. So the worst case scenario, I was going to jump in the car. But the second thought I had was that car key fob has like that panic button if you lose it in the parking lot. And I thought loud sounds like that will deter wildlife. I have friends that are rangers at national parks, and they have encouraged me to use like a foghorn or extremely bright flashlights to flash in their eyes, and they say that will help deter them. Well, I had neither. And then it suddenly occurred to me that if it was challenging something, another animal, for its meal, there was no other animal making a sound. It was only this creature, that bear, what I was thinking was a bear. This sound was so loud, but it was so pure. It wasn't guttural. It was just so pure. And it just almost like an echo. And this thing went on for about 30 minutes. I mean, this wasn't like a 1 or 2 time noise and then you don't hear it anymore. It continued to do it, and it kept getting louder and more agitated, I think is a good word. Well, it wasn't coming any closer. It was keeping its distance back there in the creek. And I finally thought, gosh, am I going to just sleep in my car? And it's like, no, I'm tired. I'm going to go get my air mattress, put my pistol under my pillow, and kept a flashlight and had a knife. And I thought, I'll just go back to bed. If it was going to attack me, it probably would have done it by now. And so at some point I fell asleep, but it did go on for like a half hour. So I don't know if it went on longer than that, and I just slept through it or what. So the next morning I get up and I'm thinking, gosh, if it was a bear and it was after a coyote or a bobcat or a mountain lion, and I live in Arizona, I have seen and heard practically everything you can think of, and I've camped all over the place, and I know what animals sound like, and in different circumstances. So whether they're mad or whether they're retreating or whether they're just sending you a warning, And this didn't sound like anything I had ever heard or have heard since. So I go out to the creek and there's no evidence of anything being killed there. There's no fur, there's no feathers, there's no blood, there's no footprints of anything, any kind that I can find. Not even a raccoon. And they're always washing their food in the creeks. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I walked it a good long ways up and back and up and back, and I found nothing. I did talk to a ranger who was really good at avoiding the topic of anything unusual happened last night. Anybody report any sounds? Oh, no, nothing going on. Have a good day. Would not make eye contact. So I didn't feel good about it. None of the campers was talking. It was like we all heard it and nobody was saying anything to anyone else. So I finally just packed up my stuff and decided it was hot and humid, and I'm going to head over to the Blue Ridge, and that's exactly what I did. But I did do some research online, trying to listen to different bears and the sounds that they make, and moose, elk, because they can make some pretty god-awful sounds too. I've had an elk challenge me in a dry creek bed, and that was scary. We were unexpectedly in the middle, and he was not happy to see me, and I was a little nervous to see him, but he did let me go my way. I managed to get out of that. I was blessed to get out of that one, to be honest with you. So I was researching different sounds that animals make, and I have found nothing that sounded like what I heard that night. It was, when you hear a blood-curdling scream, it was not a scream, but it was blood-curdling. And my husband and I were watching this movie tonight. It was on a Sasquatch in Arkansas, and growing up in Oklahoma, I'm very familiar with all the lore about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, and I would not be surprised, but I have yet to prove it. So my encounter at the campground in Tennessee is just going to remain unexplained, because I do like to debunk when I can. That's why I like going after myth and lore, because I've been places where I've been able to debunk it, and then I've been other places where I could not explain those unexplained events, which is always interesting because it makes you say, well, what if? But yeah, that was my campground story, and I do not have an answer for it to this day, but it would not surprise me if there is such a thing as Sasquatch, which I kind of think there is. I don't know where they come from. I don't know how they survive without being found. And that's a whole rabbit hole to go down for another time. But it would not surprise me if it was not some type of a Sasquatch who was not happy with us campers invading their space. Anyway, I'm sure some of you have had stories like that where you've heard or seen something that you can't explain, and it stays with you all these years later, and I would love to hear about those. So leave me some comments. I told you my story, now you tell me yours. And then hopefully as soon as it cools down a little bit and I can finish up some of my projects that I'm doing, then I am definitely going to hit the road and we're going to go explore together. I've already got a couple of places I want to go, but not when it's 105 degrees. It's just a little bit warm right now. So soon, coming soon, knock on wood. No, don't knock on wood. That would mean you would be Sasquatch.